officially to a slightly delayed Bookends. Thanks for your patience. Yeah. So Bookends is made possible through a grant from the Five Wings Arts Council, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund to the Wadena County Historical Society. This month, Bookends will feature the work of poet Laura Hansen, whose most recent book about her cancer journey is called Waiting Rooms. You can also see selections of this poetry on the Poetry Rock at Green Island throughout the month of October. It's lovely there. If you haven't been, you should check it out. And the Zoom recording of this program will be available on YouTube shortly, along with our other presentations previously. And if you have questions for today's author, we'll have a question and answer period here in the room. But if you guys at home have questions, you can just add them to the chat and we'll make sure they get asked. All right, well, without further ado, turn it over to
Thank you.
Laura Hansen. Yay!
Thank you. I know we've mentioned in a lot of the advertising about the latest chapbook that I put together. It is a self-published book called Waiting Rooms, my breast cancer journey in poems. I should know the title of it, shouldn't I? But I am also a librarian. I work at the Little Falls Carnegie Library as part of the Great River Regional Library System. And so, I don't know, I just want to warm up with a couple of library poems. Is that okay with you guys?
Sure.
All right. Waiting for an invitation. Will you please recommend me warmly to the library ladder, the oak desk, the inlaid gold letters on spines? I have been wanting to make their acquaintance for so long. Please introduce me to the deckled pages, the half-moon thumb indexes, the margin notes, the epigraphs and French end papers. Please recommend me warmly to these most hallowed halls with their ranked and ordered shelves, the classic books penned by hand, the darkened library with worn leather chairs, portraits of horses and hounds on the walls is my nirvana, my happy place, though I have never been in a room such as this. Introduce me, if you would, to the old poet, the white-haired novelist, the philosopher in scuffed slippers and smoking jacket. I know there is a place for me there, a recitation I could share to win over their calcified hearts. If you would please just open the door for me, pull the brass handle to the library of my dreams and grant me entrance. If you would, please recommend me warmly to the library ladder, the oak desk, to the books waiting to be read. Everybody can hear well? Everybody on that end happy? All right, I'm going to turn this way so I'm facing the camera just a little bit. For a friend who thinks her devotion didn't matter, at least you read to them, your voice a song of their childhood, a metronome giving a cadence to the rhythm of their adult days, calm and steady under the delirium of rushing off to work, paying bills, fixing lunch, watching TV, scrolling through phones, downloading apps, settling a fussy child, the demands of bosses and clients and lovers. Under all that is the rise and fall of your voice, murmuring a story, rolling words into little paper scrolls, sealed with a breath. All your hopes for them tied up in the tail of that little chuffing engine, or the poky little puppy. The princess that escapes the wolf, the children following a path of crumbs, flowers growing in an imaginary garden. All those snuggled bookish hours are shelved beneath the ribs, there to keep them warm when adult life becomes hard and cold. They may be far from you now, too busy to read, to call, angry even, but you give them this lullaby, your love of books, your voice, your heart. All those moments are never lost. Take heart and remember whatever else at least you read to them. So I want to make sure, as we start into this section about breast cancer poems and how they came to be. That I hope that there are men willing to read and listen these poems to. We're all women pretty much in here today, but it is a topic for everybody. I wrote this series of poems and I started posting originally, and I had a lot of really big response on my Facebook, Laura Hansen poet. And so I started setting them aside, and then I noticed a call for poetry from a woman named Jolie Serino, and she put together this volume, We Had to Be. And two of the poems that I wrote early on when I was starting my breast cancer, as they call it, a journey, are in this book. There is also a poem by a man in this book that had breast cancer. So remember, it is not just a women's issue. Certainly not in terms of personal health, and certainly not in terms of how it affects an extended family, friendships, everyone connected to the individual that is going through the process of treating breast cancer. So I'm going to read a little out of order. Both of these poems are in waiting rooms. But this is like the very beginning, the very start of the book, and it's page 84 of We Had to Be. I don't have a bunch of copies of this anymore, but they are on Amazon. Tending the garden. They tell me this blossom needs to be cut off the stem. Pinch back is the term my gardener friends use. It's good for the plant to remove more senior flowers, those that are weakening, fading, to allow for new growth, new flowering. But this hard cutting back the doctors propose is to prevent new growth, not promote it. The weeding, the medicinal pruning will be absolute, and I will carry on with one less flower in my garden. But today I am still in full bloom, a garden unto myself. So that was after diagnosis, but before I really knew the full extent of the journey I was going to go on. And the other one that is mine in this book is called Ode to My Right Breast, and that I'm going to get to in a minute. Tending the Garden that I just read is also up on the poetry walk. If you go to Green Island for the poetry walk, or if you just go to Green Island because it's an awesome way to heal and to believe in the goodness of the greenness of our world still, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. So please do think about that. I mentioned with some strength that breast cancer isn't just for women, discussion isn't just for women. And this is a book, brand new, Sturgetown, poems by the incredible poet Kwame Dawes. He was at CLC not long ago in Brainerd for Birth Like Water. And I was so impressed with his presence and his writing. I did pick up the new book, and in it, he has this poem called After the Biopsy. After the biopsy, she weighs her joy and finds it wanting. Her body now a conundrum of betrayals. How easily we forget how the nail gently brushing a nipple sends light. Oh, the bright light of the world piercing through our bodies, spreading the irritable sweetness of delight and needle pricks. Now cupped, her breasts carry the weight of all her fears. The nipples have grown into wounds, a warning where used to be pleasure. These days it is hard not to know that left alone, untouched, the body returns to a native smell, the smell of earth, of decay, of corruption, and all this is a testing of faith. We wait for our Charon to arrive in a lab coat with hands smelling of antiseptic creams. No one has to prophesy death, the bones pushing against the skin. Here is where they say her end begins. This purple spot, this complex of dark veins and stone-hard flesh, this insult, this intrusion. Her fingers have grown used to the rise and roll of a tiny pebble under the skin. She is playing with her unmaking. The doctor offers to remove it all, to take away the weight of her old pleasures, to flatten the ground she walks on, and only then, cupping these ordinary things, does she begin to weep, her body warming with the confusing and overwhelming wash she cannot quiet. This is a song of loss and the passing of light. When I read this, I was absolutely stunned at the depth and understanding of Kwame Das to write this poem, and just touched greatly by it. And it talks in there about cupping this moment. So that's where I'm going in the next poem. Couple of them here. Post-op notes. My breast is blue. My pee is green. My arm is painted orange. And that is the good news. Surgery complete. I now have 2 weeks of forced vacation in what should be spring. But this is Minnesota. And so instead of enjoying the sun and planting my garden, I'm looking out the window and wondering if the rain will turn to snow. I have 3 sets of initials in black marker on my breast. They look like a vertical line of Chinese characters, one of those tattoos that young people get, even though they don't know what it means. My right side looks like a graffiti wall, a Jackson Pollock painting. I guess that makes me pretty hip, pretty cool. Ooh. This whole bit of writing through this process, it isn't all about grief, loss. It isn't all dark and scary. I included in this book grace notes, which I call it, and interludes, moments of joy, moments of caring for other people. And above all, I also picked poems for this that I felt stood on their own as a good literary piece of work, a well-written poem. So I hope you find them well written, because that was my intent, that I wasn't just, okay, it's about breast cancer, it's going in, or this whole thing has to be dark and take us through this under place that we don't want to go. There's a lot more there. However, I did go through first a lumpectomy, which turned out to be insufficient to the needs, and then a mastectomy after I healed. You have to heal before they will cut you open again. So then I healed, and then I went through mastectomy, and then radiation. So that was my steps, and I was very glib. I kept thinking, no big deal. I've had that one for ages. It's nothing. No big deal. They took a few biopsies, 17. No big deal. Okay, it's just a lumpectomy. No big deal. And the big deals kept piling on, and we'll talk about that later too. Ode to my right breast, and this was written after lumpectomy, but before mastectomy. All week after surgery, I carried you in my hand, cradled you, hot, swollen beast. But now I must let you go. Bequeath you to the surgeon's slick, slender blade, to the space-time continuum of dissection and formaldehyde suspension. Bequeath you to the universe of cellular breakdown, the land of necrosis, to the science of recovery, of carrying forward, of imbalance and asymmetry. I say goodbye to you, my right breast, as we part ways at this unexpected time. I thank you for the blessing of being part of me, for the blessing of holding within you the seed of my tumultuous nature that now must be set free. for the darkness that you held cradled in a place safe from the rest of my body. I thank you and release you as I build a new carapace out of chaos, out of loss. I release you. I release you. I don't know if you've ever heard the Horse's poem by George Harjo. I feel a little resonance with the ending of that poem there. I release you. I release you. So there can be moments of humor when your brain takes you on a little side trip from what you're doing. At the clinic, lost in thought. This exam table has been sterilized, reads the little white tent card across from where I am sitting. I don't know if the note is meant to be reassuring to me, the patient, or act as a signal to the next nurse on duty. Oh yes, I have done my job, the room is ready. I imagine going out into the world with a supply of these cards folded in my hands and gifting them to the world like origami cranes. Imagine little messages throughout the city. This park bench has been sterilized. This handrail down to the subway, to the overlook. My hands are so busy propping tent cards up on garbage cans, dumpsters, stop signs, I forget my way, delve deeper into unfamiliar neighborhoods. I tent the storm grate, a bicycle handle, hand one off to a surprised mother and her child. I have to reprint them in multiple choice. This surface, handle, vehicle, conveyance, bench, check the box, has been sanitized. I've gone a little crazy and worrying about what other languages may be needed to clarify my point. In French, I can't do this, disinfectant. In Spanish, disinfectado. In Hmong, clean is cheb bin and Ojibwe. There are too many to contemplate. In the end, the exam room door clicks open, and I am confronted by the nurse's open, smiling face. And it is all the reassurance I need. This cool, efficient competence. I am here. No cards needed. But maybe, just maybe, I could hide a thank you note by the monitor or in the bushes on my way out. I have a poem here that I want to do. It did not make it in the book. It was written later because these things don't just stop. Just because you end your radiation or your chemo or whatever your cure might be, it takes years to come back to yourself. And so the poems kept coming, even after I did the book a year for my last radiation. The language of cancer. We are not brave. We are not warriors. Warriorship requires weapons we can wield. The choice was never ours to carry this disease. The weapons belong to the doctors and technicians, not us. We are survivors, yes, for now. There is always that unspoken caveat. It lurks in the deepest pool, ominous tail, stirring the mud. We are not brave. We are haunted. We are not warriors. We are peacemakers. We are making peace with ourselves. And when we talk about it not being, we're not warriors really. We're also not, I never responded, although I use the term because sometimes I don't know what else to say about this journey thing. Cancer journey. Let's go on a trip. It'll be fun. So this is called Present, and it's on page 8 of the book. Present. I don't know why they call it a journey. A cancer diagnosis doesn't so much set you on a journey as stop you in your tracks. Immediately, you become suspended in a state of denial and confusion, of waiting on tests, canceling plans. You begin to spend hours in waiting rooms, eyes on your feet, on the ceiling, tapping your phone, anything but making eye contact with the other journeyers. There are so many of us. Names called out by rooming nurses, name, birth date, name, birth date, name, birth date. We shuffle to exam rooms to the cadence of our personal details. Name, yes, I confirm I am still here, present, still the person I used to be, mostly. Yes, I am 65 years old, Aquarian. My blood pressure rises and falls with my annoyance at the questions, with the delays in traffic, the discomfort of incisions, scans, more scans, radiation burns. I'm told I'm responding as expected, though there is nothing normal about this string of days where the only motion is to medical facilities and back again. These circular trips do not constitute a journey, more a long, frustrating delay. A trip to a place where no one knows our name, though we recite it again and again. Hansen, Laura, present, January 1957. Yes, I am here. And even now, nearly a month after my last radiation treatment, I'm stuck. I try to act like I'm making plans, but I don't quite believe in them yet. I'm held in this take it day to day mindset that just might be permanent. It becomes very hard to start planning again. About a month after my last radiation treatment, I planned a trip up north to kind of celebrate a long weekend. And on my way home, the phone rang, and my nephew in his early 40s had died of an aneurysm. And I just took it personally. It was like, yes, you know better than to plan something. A horrible thought, something much more significant than me had happened. But that was my first response, was like, yes, you planned something, you fool. Why? I have a poem, if I have a little time at the end, that I'm going to read. I lost 2 nephews in 2 years, and I only have like 13 living relatives, and so this was big. But first, I want to do Radiation Day. Waiting room. After the privacy of each patient listens for their name to be called: Bob, Bill, Lorraine, Abdi. Our personal data is closely guarded, but our first names echo down the halls, each of us present and accounted for, greeted like VIPs, and ushered to treatment rooms. These days they call it rooming, this process where they lead you to a cell and close the door to wait some more. From this holding area, we hear others being quizzed as they are escorted down the hallways. State your name and date of birth. I hear the muffled replies, the dates spanning generations, names fancy and plain. I listen in on their recitations, their privacy and mine slipping away. A tap on the door. The care team enters, and for the 3rd time in an hour, I verify my date of birth, first and last name. Only then am I allowed to remove everything from the waist stop, climb onto the metal table, and receive the skin searing, irradiating light that strobes and flashes like an undulating aurora across the exposed field of my oh so private chest. I have 2 poems here about the trips back and forth, 5 days a week, 30 miles one way for radiation and other appointments. I'm going to do the one in the book first. I am not your husband's cancer. On the way to radiation, we talk about your husband who died last year, and over lunch we compare our parents' final days, list lost friends. We can't seem to stop talking about death, though the prognosis here is good. Radiation, just a precaution. Yet on the drive home, we circle back to the dead, Their stories more compelling than the recently healed, the long haul survivors. The dead carry the weight of our guilt, it seems, the lingering doubt about decisions made and decisions not made soon enough. They remind us that life is tricky and sometimes short. No talk of recent medical advances can keep us from our thoughts of death, of these last days when we were just of their last days when we were just thankful if they remembered our names, of the respite of morphine, the whispered permissions. It's okay. You can let go now. Be at peace. We arrive home to find we are talked out, at least until tomorrow, when we travel this road and back again, the dead riding along beside us. When your story became my story, and this is for my friend Deb that drove almost all my trips. When your story became my story, I hope it's okay, but there was no way to tell it without you. No way to say thanks except to say you were there. It would be like telling someone excuse me. I hope it's okay, but there was no way to tell it without you. No way to say thanks, except to say you were there. It would be like telling someone I went to the lake without mentioning the sun casting diamonds across the water. I hope it's okay that our stories meld, that our losses are now commingled, waters from two rivers now one at the junction of our meeting. From now on, your story will travel the length of my story, and my story will be colored by the telling of yours. As rain slurries good black earth to mud, and sun returns it, caked and cracked, back to soil, we have together, by our travels and conversations, been restored. I don't know if you've ever seen those pictures where two different rivers come together, one's blue and one's murky, and they come into an estuary together, and it takes a while to come together, and eventually they're one, and that's what I had in mind when I wrote that. Okay. This was nearly a year later after I finished up all my treatments, which everything's good. Docs are all happy. Diagnosis. This is how we lose time. Sometimes in the slow drip of days, sometimes in a cascade of events. Some days drift in fog, others blanketed in snow, which is to say it's been a whole year now since the clinic called with results, and time turned on its head, took a tumble into this jagged new reality. That is another one that's up at the Poetry Walk at Green Island. A lot of things we do to comfort ourselves along the way. And this is called breath work. I have lost my ability to speak. With each breath I take, a soft, encouraging voice enters and becomes prayer. I store up the strength this day of easy breath and sun provides for tougher times. Whatever you believe, this air, this holy breath is yours too. Is your lift and your loft. And when you need to settle a bit, to hide away from the weary day, there is a nest built for you where you will be cradled and fed, protected from the fiercest storms. Are we going to do a little question and answer afterwards? How much time should I leave?
It's 10:12.
As much as you want.
Yeah,
This is
you, because
This is an older poem that found its way into the book because I included a poem about my sister-in-law called Other Rooms. And I couldn't leave that out because we were talking waiting rooms is the title. Maybe I'll read them side by side, and that thought brought me to thinking about healing, both not for myself, but for others, so I'll do these two. Other rooms, in memory of my sister-in-law, Kim Hansen. When Thomas doubted the life he saw before him, he asked to touch Christ's wounds. He touched his palms to Christ's pierced hands, to his punctured side, and knew. Standing here, looking at the place where the chemo port enters your chest, following the red burn of the line as it passes into your skin, I feel like Thomas, needing to touch those sacred places to truly know you. If I could, I would place a palm to your chest, slip my finger into your palm, aim my doubting eyes straight into your eyes. You've grown frailer, but more human too, weaker and yet more godlike. How are we to understand this transformation, this moving so effortlessly from one room to another? And I lied because I'm going to skip. There's a little section at the end of the book, which is a few pieces from a 10-piece pamphlet I did after my brother passed away of cancer. Just keeps popping up, different kinds, everybody, but it's so present. And it's called Watching the Heron Rise. Since we spoke on the phone last week, I've woken almost every day to find the heron lifting off from shore. He has been hunkering down in the backyard along the wall, and I'm surprised every time to see his wings unfurl and stretch to embrace the silver air, to see his legs slowly lengthen and rise, to experience his daily resurrection. Awakened by the scrape of the patio door, he gathers up his night cloak and trims his sails. His ancient legs dip to the water, then lift and rise to join the long line of his body. Since we talked last week of your cancer, I have observed this daily work of lifting a body at rest into flight. I have witnessed the transformation of spirit to light. I want to try something with you that is a work in progress somewhat. I was at a workshop in Santa Fe. And well, maybe I'll pass these around. You won't be able to see them on there, but I was doing a workshop on writing in response to art. And I came across this image in a gallery. It's photographs layered kind of in sepia print, and I'm going to send that around so they get some sense of it.
Oh,
And
okay.
it stopped me in my tracks.
Wow.
And I looked at her, this woman in the picture, and I said, that is me. Somehow they have my picture.
Ugh.
It was instantaneous. And since I was writing to art, and it was art, and I had a profound response, this is what I wrote. Woman under glass, ekphrastic, marital Rubinstein photograph, Wilma offering bowl. That's the title of the piece, Wilma offering bowl. And marital Rubinstein is the photographer. Woman under glass, the sag of her breasts, strangely leached of color, belly flaccid, leaning evenly to a gravid ground, the breast shorn in half nearly, and the heavy metals that circle her chest like a mercury moon. Ley lines of silver appear to pierce her arms. The photographer has superimposed this pale destruction across her torso, rendered her as transparency, a sepia print, as stained carrier of ink and man's desires, an X-ray film exposed, an industrial waste. But all I see is woman carrying on. I feel so intense about that. I'm going to stop and take some questions, and if we don't have a lot of questions, I'll read one more. Are there questions?
I have
Yes,
a question about, does this have any, do you have some poetry at the island?
Green Island?
Green Isle?
yes, as part of being the presenter this month, I have 6 pieces from waiting rooms that are on display at Green Island, and Green Island regularly keeps part of its walking path. Every so often you'll stop and you'll see a signpost and there will be poetry there by various artists. And so yes, they have put up 6 of the poems from the book, pretty much the shorter ones because they have to be sized. But yes, you may walk the paths. Most of it is pretty broad and even to walk. Even when I was with a cane earlier this summer, I managed to get through it pretty well. That is 6 of them are up at that location at Green Island outside of Wadena.
That, little house that he has there for contemplation. for
I
some
have
people.
not, I wish, I would love to come up here and do that one day. It is a lovely little, she asked if I use the Green Island meditation house to go up and write in, and there's this little treetop meditation house that you can register to use, I understand, and be right in the middle of this curated environment that is.
Did you do this mostly just in your bedroom, or how did you come to?
Yeah, I write mostly from a line that comes to my head. It'll be like, when you hear in your head the start of a song that you knew a long time ago, but you don't quite remember it all. And you're like, it's a little melody and it's a little earworm, and you're trying to get the rest of it. What was the rest of that song? And that's what writing poetry is like for me. It's sometimes when I wake up, but sometimes just something I hear in conversation. But there's a phrase that's musical or that has certain words that touch me, and I have to follow it. So a lot of people say, oh, that's a great idea, you should write that poem. But I don't write from ideas, I write from those little niggling phrases that the only way I can deal with them is to write it out and see what comes next and see what comes next and see what comes next. So I know it's not everybody's process. Mine happens a lot at night. I'm a night owl. But that's my process is what I hear initially. I can give you an example of maybe. I recently I was looking in some old talking stick literary journals, and I was looking for little phrases I could use to put on. I've been making these little poetry, they're library cards, old library cards, and I've been collaging on them and putting little phrases on them, and I cut out a phrase from the talking stick, and it was through every broken window. And that was my starter, because once I had through every broken window in my head, it just needed to say more. So this is recent writing. Through every broken window. Through every broken window, leaves scurry like naughty mice. Rocks escape young boys' hands. Birds thrash their kamikaze feathers. Below every broken window, glass shards sparkle by daylight with devilish gleam. Threaten unprotected feet. Speak unspeakable dreams. Beware the broken window. Trust shattering in an angry instant. The falling tree racked by wind that brings the storm inside. Through every broken window, every broken promise, frost arrives and shows the heart. Beware the hurling stone, the wedge of glass. Young boys and fragile feathered birds of love will break your heart. So I start with the phrase, and I don't plan where it's going. I don't know where it's going. And sometimes you get home. Yes.
Hi, I'm glad you read that one because I have a point about your presentation and also Thomas Smith, the poet who was on the last Bookends. Because what you bring to us today with your poetry and waiting rooms is very much a stark contrast to what his presentation was, being in the natural world. And, dealing with illness is very much doesn't feel like it's part of the natural world.
Yeah,
So I just think that speaks to the versatility of poetry, that you can be in two different, completely different realms. But when what you just read is, there is the natural world, and the voice is coming from on the other side of a window, and a broken window at that.
yeah,
So even when you have two completely separate realms, there's still that little bit of synergy between that you can find between poems and styles. So
Yeah.
I think that was a very good poem to read right now, because that's what I've been thinking this whole presentation about, just the contrast.
well, then I will give you, in that case, the connections. This is, I think I did this one for the poetry walk. Oh, and I have one I can't leave without doing, so. All right, oh, it's in the poetry walk. A change of season.
Mhm.
As I sat in the sun drawing flowers, a butterfly landed on my thigh and then slowly climbed. It delicately felt its way over the borderland between pant and shirt, gained purchase on the flannel hem, and continued to rise, traversing the rise of my belly, crossing the flatland where my right breast used to live atop a rugged landscape of ribs. It stopped there, just above the plateau of loss, gaining strength, flexing its wings, a blessing. And that's on page 15 of the book. So it's impossible not to do this. A lot of life after mastectomy is trying to figure out what to do with your new body.
Yeah.
Clothes don't fit right. All my V-neck tops are gone. Have to try and find other things that drape differently. And even with the blessed help of they give us with mastectomy bras, things don't always go right. It took me a long time to find one that fit and was comfortable, either too tight, crossing across scar tissue, or flipping up and not staying in place. I recently took out, got some bras I liked, but they're front closed and they keep popping open, especially when I'm doing the book drop at work. Not a good thing. And this week I took my front clothes and I cleared the kitchen table and I got out a hammer. And I hammered those darn hooks in place, and flattened them, and now it stays shut. So I've had a victory here, and I'm really excited about it, and I'm gonna hammer the rest of them.
Excellent.
Yeah, this is called mastectomy bras. Mastectomy bras. Oh, how we fight with fit. The weight of the prosthetic causing it to shimmy to the left, spill out on the right. This attempt to find some semblance of who we used to be, to reclaim our sense of ourselves, our shapeliness and balance. The band on this one is too tight. The other won't stay in place. How disconcerting to find yourself sporting a center-like boob, and all in the name of trying for normalcy, whatever that is. Better to be like the women of the bra-burning 60s and let the truth of us all hang out. This is us. This is me, dancing by the campfire of my life, alive, unbalanced, and free. There was one poem that I was going to read. I think we're going to run long if I do. And mastectomy bras is always such a good place to stop. But there are books back there, and if you would, it's a really fun. One of the people that gave me blurbs for my book One, it's a broad range of people, which I love, but one is Guante, who Kyle Myritron, who is a spoken word artist in the Twin Cities. Fabulous individual, fabulous performer. And I don't do spoken word, but I try to put a little bit of it into mastectomy for us. There's one other piece in here that he told me worked very well as a spoken word performance rather than just a reading. And it's interludes number 1 on page 16. So I can reference it to you over there, or I can read it for you. Put your hands up if you're tired and want to stretch your legs, or we'll read.
Looks like you're reading.
Nobody wants to stretch. All right, I'm gonna do my best, the best attempt at spoken word here, though I can't memorize things, so I'm not, like going pageless there. Interludes. So maybe I'm not so okay. Maybe I just found a new layer of grief. They always talk about the stages of grief, but if one thing follows another and another, then grief gets all tangled up in layers and the stages keep starting over and can't sort themselves out. Let's talk about that kind of grief, of multi-layered loss, like a tornado swooping down over a parched and burning field. I remember an image from the Grand Forks Red River flood of 1997, where the sandbags failed and the river flooded the whole town, and there was water up to the 2nd floor, and smack in the middle of all that turgid water was a big brick building on fire. That's multi-layered grief, where trouble comes in unmanageable pairings and there is no easy checklist to know you are what you are doing. You are drowning in sorrow and burning up with rage and denial at the same time. Or maybe each new loss you've layered on another and another security blanket until you've just muffled and stifled, but you don't know if it's safe yet to start peeling the layers off. Let's talk about that kind of grief. Tell me how you are handling that.
Well, thank you very much. And I guess you've got the signing in the back. So
Yes.
if people are interested, they can go back.
All right.
Thank you very much, everyone.